can tell her, you can tell her anything. She's a real good listener. You can tell her anything.
Yo, what's up? It's your girl, Father Longlegs. You know me, Daddy T. This is You Can Tell Me Anything, the podcast where comedians confess something they want to get off their chest. I'm very excited for my guest today. He is the host of Faded Comedy, or creator, one of the co-creators of Faded Comedy, and since spread all over the country because there's a Faded Comedy LA, and they host Twitch live streams, and they did a cocktail hour, which I had a lot of fun and got way too trash doing. It's Mike Mulloy. What's up?
Hey, how we doing?
Good, how are you? Is Faded like an empire now?
It has splintered off into different cities just because the people who I started it with moved home.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, so it's...
Corey moved back to Denver, Sean Jordan moved back to Portland, and we figured we might as well plant a flag in each city.
I love that, though. It's like organic. Before we get too far, I like to ask my guests for a good confession, just so the audience can get to know you. It's just like a humble brag or something positive, just anything that's like good, like not shitting on anything.
When is this releasing? Because I haven't put pen to paper on something good that just happened, but it probably should.
Oh, it'll be, so the new season comes back in 2 weeks, so I think this will probably be like the third episode, so mid-February, late February. Is that...
Right. Well, I'm supposed to be taping something for Comedy Central in March.
Ah! Oh my god, that's amazing! Yeah. Congratulations. Huge. That will time up really well.
2 weeks, or I gotta take
No, manifest that. It's almost like we're enforcing the reality that it's happening by like living on this path. Congratulations, that's huge. Well, this pod, I don't know how much you know about it, but I know we know each other as comedians. But I sort of started this because I started going to therapy later in life and realized like the combination of like doing stand-up on stage was cathartic, but you know, there's a lot of, you have to put things in specific formats and punchlines. And I realized like I just really enjoy getting things off my chest and talking, whether it's in punchline form or in therapy. So I like to ask my guests sort of like, what's your, do you have a confidant? What's your sort of routine when you have things you want to talk through? Like, do you go to therapy or is it with your partner or like, you know, best friend, that sort of thing? What's your routine?
I did have a therapist before the pandemic started, and then she retired. So that kind of threw me for a loop to have her retire like 2 weeks before a pandemic and then just be like, well, fuck this for a while.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so I've been raw dogging life.
Raw dogging life. Oh my god, I don't think I've ever heard it put that way.
Yeah, I could probably use some of that therapy lately, but yeah, no, it's just been, you know, burdening my fiance and my friends as of late.
But that's that metaphor. Sorry, I'm like stuck on that because I just realized there's so many layers of like that you're not using protection, which is like mental health protection. I just like really like that. That hits all the things I like, which is really stupid sex puns and therapy and mental health. So, but yeah, I mean, everyone's in a different place. Like I actually don't go as much as I did when I first started because now it's all over Zoom and I tend to like focus on specific things. But I do realize like when it goes too long and I don't have comedy or anything, I do start getting listless. But yeah, there's no like, I feel like whenever I ask this question, people are like, oh, I should be going more, but there's no wrong or right way to do it. Yeah. And yeah. All right, let's take a quick break, Mike. Okay, when we get back, I want to hear all about your juicy confession. And we're back. Mike, the time has come. I'm sure you're holding this tight to your chest, but it's time to let me know. Is there anything you want to tell me?
Yeah, I don't watch much stand-up for a stand-up. I don't enjoy watching it.
You don't enjoy, okay. You not only don't watch it much, but you don't enjoy watching it. Are we talking TV or like live shows? Like, do you kind of just hate all of it?
just like specials and
okay.
stuff. I don't really watch. I love live comedy. I think it's a very different thing than watching it on TV.
Yeah.
I hate sitting in an audience though for for stand up. That makes me wildly uncomfortable. I want to either hang in the back or hang.
I mean, that's classic stand-up feeling about it, though, because I think in the first couple of years, I was still kind of a fan in the sense that I was like doing stand-up and wanted to go to shows. And that's when I started feeling weird sitting in shows. But if I go with a friend who's not a stand-up and you see a friend, like that's like more like a weird social dynamic. That's strange.
That's even tough for me. Like that's, when I have friends that are like performing at theaters or like taping a special, I'll come to this. I'm just like, oh, you're lucky you're my friend, because otherwise
Huh. Okay, I want to dig into this more. Well, I don't know if you already know the answer to this, but if not, we can definitely dissect it. But is there a specific reason why?
Oh, I mean, it's probably, I don't know. It's probably just anxiousness. If I'm sitting there watching that, I'm kind of like.
Do you compare yourself in career-wise?
Compare myself, but like I'm like, I wish I was up on stage right now. Like it's like going to a sporting event that you're just you're recently removed from played it. Like if I was to go to if I was to go to a high school football game my freshman year at college, I'd be sitting there being like, fucking, I want to be playing right now.
Damn. I was just gonna ask the sports question because I know you used to play as well, but I was surprised that's where you went with it, because I guess I'm not as athletic or ever was gonna play in college or anything, but I would think that it's also enjoyable to watch as long as it's not like the playoff game you missed. But that's really interesting. Like, did you have dreams to go pro in high school?
Not in football, no. But
or just any like,
before
okay.
I ripped my arm.
So there's an element where like you really saw that sort of like far away long goal. And then so anything that reminds you of almost like this is a path I could have taken maybe puts you in that.
It's more so just that I always enjoyed the participating in it more than I enjoyed the watching it, or especially at that level. I mean, I'm not trying to watch fucking high school football games.
Did you watch stand-up growing up? Was there a moment it went from you feeling different about it, or were you always just like, did you come into comedy through a back door and then like never really got into watching specials?
I watched a lot of my growing up. Comedy Central wasn't in our area for some reason. Like we didn't get it in our area, like on our cable package until like late 90s maybe. So I grew up more watching like Comic View on BET. That was like Def Comedy Jam, shit like that. So I had a very different perspective of comedy than I think most of the white people.
The white people. But you watched like as an audience, right? Or were you always from that early age like feeling like this is something I have a calling to do, like I want to perform?
I've always growing up, I was always like a big Conan guy, so that was always like what I had wanted to do, and I really didn't think of stand-up as like a fucking option. I just I had no idea how you got into stand-up. I didn't really watch a whole lot. I wasn't one of those kids that like grew up on certain stand-ups. I really liked like Norm Macdonald was like one of my favorite comedians. Martin Lawrence.
Yeah. I think that's not that unusual unless your parents are really into stand-up, especially definitely like immigrant parents like mine. Like I wasn't even aware of it like consciously I think I generally understood if you asked me like, have you heard of stand-up comedy? But the whole idea that you could go to a club and watch it, I wasn't aware till I got to college. I guess I'm trying to get at more is like there was that moment that you enjoyed it like as a passive audience, like, genuinely like watching it and like, this is cool, this journey you're taking me on, and then it switched, or it was a little like you never genuinely like connected to watching it as much as you did to performing.
So I in college there was like a stand-up contest, and I entered it having never done stand-up and did pretty well, and then like let it sit for a couple of years. I was like working in fucking tech, and this girl that I was dating at the time took me to she was from Maine, and there's this comedian named Bob Marley who everybody in Maine is absolutely
his name is Bob Marley. That's funny.
Yeah. And I went and saw it and was just for an hour just gritting my teeth. I could fucking do this. Like I could. Like, I don't even remember what he said. I don't even remember if it was if it was as bad as in my mind it was. But I was just sitting there just being like, I could fucking do this better. And so I kind of got into stand-up out of spite, I guess.
Wow, that is like such an like a jock athlete bully thing to say. But it's so funny that it did work out because you are a stand-up, and I've never heard of. I mean, I've heard of the Bob Marley, the other Bob Marley, but not Bob Marley, this comedian from Maine. So clearly you're not wrong about that. I mean, I have no idea that they're good or not. So I mean, I'm not trying to shit on them, but they're not on this pod. That's so funny though, because that, I mean, I'm sure you've heard that sort of trope of like doing comedy on stage and having the guy with the girl on a date and the guy's like trying to heckle or be funny because he's like, have you heard this trope before of like
but I'm not trying. I was never trying to do like I'm not gonna interrupt anybody's good time, but I was sitting like, you know, I was
right, but you felt that like something within you was lit up.
Yeah, I'm a competitive person by nature, and when I see somebody doing something that I think I could do better, you know, it brings out the worst in me. But...
Damn. I mean, that's like a lot of. Maybe I should be using spite to fuel my career because that's taken you very far. I feel like my anger and spite always putters out. Like I'm like, all right, I'll do one thing and then that's it. But you do love stand-up now. I mean, I guess I'm so interested in this division because, and it's not unusual. I'm just like trying to break it down more. And maybe there's not that much here and we can move on. But I just kind of want to see, because to me, like I do have this moment where I went from being able to enjoy totally like with awe and like, you know, excitement and naivete of anything like movies and TV. And now I watch things, it always feels kind of like homework. I do still enjoy specials, but it is very different. And sometimes it does feel like more laborious. So I wonder if there was like, for you, if there was ever like the before, because I'm not sure if you like really, it sounds like you never really connected that much to watching it, but performing is what you get out of it.
I like going out and seeing stand-up. If stand-ups coming through town that I wanted to see or that I heard were good, I'd go see them live because even a television product doesn't really give me a great idea if that person...
Yeah. Isn't that so wild that so much of our world is spent trying to get that late night spot, get that special, so that we can be on a TV in front of audiences that barely understand the art form at all. Like, I didn't even realize that until you put it that way.
That are in town from fucking the Midwest that...
Yeah. Because most of the best, I mean, I obviously still would like to do all those things, but I think you're right. Like, there's something, especially you started in Boston, which has a really, really fun live scene as well. And there's something about the live comedy scene that if you're not in a big city or have never been around it, you might only ever think of stand-ups like, oh, they do their big special and that's it. And so much of like starting as a performer is not that at all. And what's so fun is the like community and the ambiance and being in the room. And it's like that, so much of that gets lost.
And I think so much of the process is not understood by the average person. Like there's times where somebody asks me if I like made that all up on the spot. And I'm just like,
oh my God.
Did I make that look this fucking easy? Like it's frivolous. Like I'm clearly, I prepared something.
I had a Lyft driver. This was like a week ago, and I was like trying not to be too combative because I was like, whatever. But it was because I was with my boyfriend. I didn't want to embarrass him. But the guy was like, we had just come from a place too where at dinner, like the table next to us, there was like an older man on a date I feel like he was trying to impress his date by dropping like that he goes to the Comedy Store, but he wasn't a comic. Like the way he was talking was like, it felt like he was like, I know comedy and that makes me cool. And I was just like gritting my teeth to not say anything. But then on the ride home, this driver started, he said something similar. He was talking about going to see a show at the store, and then I think he saw like, was it John Turturro? He saw like someone who's been around for a long time, and he was like, oh, he's so funny. And then my boyfriend was like, oh, what were some of the, because he's like, this is the funniest set I've ever seen. He's like, what were some of the jokes? And he was like, I don't know, they were just street jokes. That made me like realize that most people want to hear just they want to be in the moment where they feel like it's funny, but it's like when I think of funny jokes that I've heard from like, like our friends, our peers, like I remember them for years. And he is obviously, if you're doing well and successful and you've been in movies, you are funny. But it's just funny to hear someone say like, oh, street jokes, like your funny uncle. And that was the moment I realized like people don't want you to try hard. Well, that, but also like they want you to sound like your funny uncle, but your funny uncle is funny because he watches specials and quotes them. Like somebody wrote that shit, like nobody just, even if you went on stage and riff, like after a decade of having a career, like that decade actually made you funnier. Like you didn't just, you weren't born and riffed.
Well, I think obviously that social media has obviously changed the way that people consume what's funny. And if anything has been proven, it's that people don't care about originality or like who the original came up with. Like look at something like Fuck Jerry, where you just like 1 billion people follow this and they don't care that those people steal everything. They don't care who the original person was. They're just like, all right, give me this fucking bite-sized version so I can have my little fucking laugh and I can move on. I don't care who the first, I don't
yeah.
creating this. I care about it being delivered to my door.
You really like put it, in this way that sounds very medicinal, which is kind of funny that people say laughter is the best medicine. But you literally, the way you say like, just give me my laugh. It's like, just give me my hit. I just did a hit. Like, I don't care if this is like the real shit or it's illegal. I'm going to get it. You're like, damn.
Yeah. And you think that like the last year of like, labor being dissected the way that it is would make people kind of reevaluate that and like, make a point of when they see something funny, try to find out who the original source was.
Yeah.
But it hasn't really changed.
What if there was a way to just like sign up to receive a funny text from a comedian a day and we all just get paid like $5? Like that. I'm not in Silicon Valley, but I'm like, that would be a faster way to like get your hit and pay people. Like while we're trying to get staff, we're still going to try to do those classic things, but why wait? Because there is this element of like, I spend a lot of time working on packets and things that will never see the light of day, but it does make me not want to just like give out jokes either, which you're told you're not supposed to. But then you can't really build that audience, and Fuck Jerry can just steal a bunch of jokes and build an audience. And it is like this weird, sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't situation.
Yeah. And they've found a way to like capitalize on our jokes in a way that we never could. And it's just bullshit.
Damn.
Like today is a fucking perfect example. That guy fucking Rex Chapman, who was a basketball player and fucking all he does is just steal content for Twitter. And now CNN's giving him a fucking show. And it's just like, all right, so none of this fucking matters. This guy who fucking 5-10 years ago robbed an Apple store so he could pay for his fucking Oxycontin. And now he has a show on CNN because why not? Why not? Why not? Yeah, sure. Give it to fucking Rex Chapman.
Okay, but then I would I'm going to be a devil's advocate here and say, if that's your opinion about those kinds of shows, which is totally valid, why wouldn't you be watching more actual comedy specials to support the comedians?
Because I'm not in the game. Like,
sure.
Okay.
I'm not. They're not making it to make Mike Mulloy watch it. You're right.
it's I'm not going to pay to go see anybody. So why would they?
What was the last special you watched?
Oh, cripes. I better make sure I answer right because somebody.
Not right. I guess I'm trying to get a sense of how long, like you truly haven't been watching.
A friend of mine, some special I said I definitely watched. I might not have. The last stand-up I watched on TV was Blair Saki on Corden.
Gotcha. And then that's a late night set, right? Those are easier to, and that's the funny thing is like you immediately thought of Friends. So I can already kind of understand where you're coming from because I have a hard time too just enjoying without the thoughts of my career, but I sometimes will try to like compartmentalize, but it is different. I do have a different feeling when I'm like, oh, so-and-so just did a set, I should watch it. Like that's a different feeling than like, let me sit down and watch this special of a comic I admire. And I don't know how long I'm trying to think the last time, maybe Ronnie Chang was the last time, like I don't know him personally, but I already like was aware of him, and that was the last time I like sat down and watched a special I wanted to check out, and I wasn't like, had no investment in it, I guess. But that was still a while ago.
Just am worried about, like, I guess I'm just like, I don't want to be influenced.
Okay.
Stage, and I think the only thing I can do to be better is just like be more comfortable and be more of myself, and like dig into myself more. And I think that searching for, like, going and looking at things outside of me is only going to make things worse.
Do you play music?
No.
Because I'm okay, then I guess this wouldn't apply. But because I feel like it's like musicians. No, I totally understand. I had a rule, like, especially in the first couple of years. Now I don't really like think in terms of these rules anymore, because it's a little easier to know when I want to write and when I don't. But I used to say, like, have a rule that was like, don't write after watching stand-up or comedy, because no matter what, like, sometimes you get inspired and something starts something else that might have been original, but I just know that for a fact, like, you're still going to be in the cadence of the other person, and I get that. But that's, well, how do you feel? Are you like someone who's weird about notes? Like, do you do writing groups with friends?
No, I never really, I've never really done a whole lot of that. I was really bad about actually sitting down and writing for a very long time. And I was, just I'd do it on my notes app on the phone. And now before the pandemic, I never like wrote shit down. And now I got into the habit of having a notebook and writing shit down, and like, tacking on notes to each thing, having a page for each joke that I can just, if I do something different on stage, I can run off and just go, hey, fucking add this.
It sounds like there's a lot of anxiety around the actual, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, and I don't mean this in a judge, because I'm so curious, like, the different way we approach performing. But I think this is the first time I've heard, like, this adamantly, like, I don't like watching stand-up versus just like, I don't have time, or it doesn't do anything for me. Like, there's such a divide between how much you enjoy performing and how much it's almost like it's like a same part of your brain, but the opposite almost. Like, it's bringing out the anxiety of performing and all of what that means in watching it. I mean,
I think that during the pandemic, obviously, I learned how to like bartend a little, and now that I go out and I'll buy a fucking $16 drink somewhere, and it'll get made for me, and I'll look at it and just be like, I could have.
I was like, are you like, I can't watch any I go to the bar, you're like, I can't fucking look at a bartender making a drink.
Yeah, there's some of that where I'm just like, hey bud, that's not how you do that. And
damn.
It's tough for me to, especially like to, in a version where you're a consumer and you're putting up money for something, and you know how to do it enough to where it would be done right if you did it. When you pay for something and it's done wrong, you're kind of just like, well, fuck.
But do you ever want to just be able to, because I know that perfection feeling of like, oh, I could do it better, but like sometimes doing it, like cooking for yourself, is not the same as sitting down and not having to do anything or lift a finger and then having a meal cooked for you.
Yeah, and I think a part of it is also just that I don't want stand-up to be the only thing I have to talk about, both off stage and on. There was a lot of that when I first started, where I have conversations with people, and the only thing they fucking talked about is stand-up, and I'm just like, what do you fucking do outside of this? This shit isn't for fucking ever, and it's not gonna fucking, it's not a warm blanket you can wrap yourself in. It's a fucking thing that if you're lucky, you'll find a way to, or if you're lucky and you're talented and you work hard enough, you'll find a way to make work. But other than that, like, you better have something fucking outside of this.
Well, that's a very dark way to look, because I do know what you mean about the politics and socializing and parties that end up being so like navel gazing. But I would like to offer a perspective that like some people genuinely like watching stand-up, and that's what got them in to different degrees. But I don't know if it's all coming from this place of like, I have to immerse myself in it, or I understand what that feeling is. I've had that too, where it's like, oh, if I'm not learning enough, then I'm not gonna be a good stand-up, whereas like really you should just be working on your stand-up. But to some degree, I also that's what got me into it. Like, I like it.
But I mean, I think it's similar. I had the same issues with, when I was working a day job, where if we went out for drinks after work and they were talking about work, I'd be like, would you guys shut the fuck up and talk about anything else?
So what do you like to do for fun?
Go back to work. I like watching sports.
Okay.
I like, that's pretty much fucking it.
But no sports that you've played, only ones that you know that you have no shot at playing pro.
No. I mean, I like watching professional sports. I just don't like, like I said, like going in and watching a level that I could compete at was hard for me.
Yeah, okay.
I still, like, when I played football in high school, I still watched college football and pro football. Like, it wasn't like I was like, I should be out there playing for the Patriots. I was just like, I fucking go team,
Yeah, and sports, especially like NFL, like major leagues, everything like has a different, like the dynamic is a little different than like high school and college, where you're an athlete watching. Like there's the fandom, like that's a part of the culture, like rooting for your team, buying the merch, like whether or not the team year to year is good. Like there's a different dynamic in supporting your team that I do like I understand that brings people together the way like old school church brings people together.
Tribalism.
Yeah.
But if you want to look at it in a more positive light, it's like a community.
Yeah, there's community. Well, so some people say that comedy, like they call it like a tribe, but I'm curious, like, do you as a person, like, do you get annoyed if someone like identifies you as a comic, like, outside of comedy? Are you like someone who like doesn't like to introduce yourself that way or doesn't want people to know?
Oh, no. I mean, obviously I worked fairly hard at this to be considered that.
Well, I mean, like, there's a difference between like you're showing up to a show and like you're on the set or on stage and you're the performer, but like if you're in a, let's say you go with your fiance to like a social event and it's not comedians, like do you feel like that's something where you're like, oh, I want to have this different identity off stage?
No. I mean, it's what I do. If somebody asks about it, I'll talk about it, but I also like when I'm out having a good time, I don't want to talk about work. I work at a fucking tech company, or if I do stand-up comedy. If you want to fucking ask me shit about it, I'm not gonna like be weird and closed off about it, but it's not like something I'm fucking dying to talk to everybody about.
Damn, I never knew. I mean, this is so interesting, and this is why I like doing this pod, because I feel like we've talked in depth about so many things, but this is definitely something a different side of you that I think is really interesting, because it's like, I don't think I go around asking people in comedy if they like stand-up, because I don't know. It's like, it's not like I know out of this context. It's like, not that I wouldn't care, but it's like, why would I ask you that? But it is so interesting because I've never heard that perspective.
I think maybe it's more similar. Like I know I have a lot of friends that like golf, but they wouldn't watch golf on TV.
Okay.
And I think
but golf is slow. Stand up shouldn't be.
Stand up. I mean, in a way, but it's like.
Okay. Yeah. It doesn't make you laugh out loud, I'm assuming. A lot of these specials you're like watching just to like from an analytical brain. I'm watching in too critical a way. And like I think the pandemic softened me up in that sense, because there was a lot of times where like I'd be watching a show, a sitcom or whatever, and my fiance is like, you're actually laughing at shit now. Like, yeah, my brain's soft. Do you watch your own sets? Or do you feel weird about it?
No, I mean, I listen back to shit and try to figure out if there's stuff that I like. Oh, here's the thing that I said that I normally don't. So fucking circle that, add it to there. I used to treat it like sports, and like I'd film every set and then I'd break down everything. And I got away from that just because I found out that like not many of the comics that I like hung out with or like looked up to were doing that sort of shit, and I figured I was just kind of being a little too in my head. But
it can have its ups. I mean, I think when you're working on a specific, trying to crack the thing, but I know what you mean, because I'm not necessarily an athlete, but I was a dancer, and there's that element of perfectionism where you're like, oh, if I like move this way, or how come I got a better laugh in this room? But then it's like sometimes that live element does just affect how it goes.
Yeah, and then there's definitely times where I'm like, oh, take this thing that fucking crushed that one time you did it and add it to there, and then it never hits the same way that it did that one time.
That's okay. I have a question in terms of like your like not your comedy relationships. I mean, obviously you mentioned your fiance, but like maybe like friends or whatever outside of, college friends. Do do your friends, like, if they don't come support you, or do you like wish that they wouldn't come watch you, or if they like, I guess I'm like, do you have friends that are fans, or is it like kind of thing where you're like, that's my work and I don't really like need your approval or want you at my work?
No, no, I definitely, if I'm in town and doing shows, I always tell people either come to the show or come hang out after, whatever you're up for. It's definitely funny. Like my friends from high school saw me do stand up the first time I ever did stand up,
Uh-huh.
and I was decent from the I was decent enough that first time where they like kept coming back. But now, like, a couple years later, I was back in Boston doing a show in a theater opening for somebody else, and he's just like, one of my buddies was just like, you're like, I get so nervous when you're up there for some.
Aw,
And he's just
that's
like, I
so
know.
cute.
Yeah, it's funny, and I'm just like, I'm good at this now, right? Like, I'll be fine, and I'll figure it. Like, he's just like, yeah, I forget that sometimes.
Because he saw you blossom. That's so interesting because it's like, yeah, I remember doing my first improv show where I invited like 11 people, and I was like,
Yeah,
probably the worst that I've ever done, but it went well in the sense that like
yeah,
it went in the room, all the people were there to support their friends. Nobody was a professional, but like people were funny enough to be doing it. But then like, it's funny that you'll fast forward years later when you actually do start getting paid to do things, and it's so impossible to get friends to come out. And they're like, no,
yeah.
we
It's
get that
like
you're
I'm
good. We
good.
just you don't need our support anymore. And you're like, but now I
Yeah.
want you to remember that I actually got good.
Well, I definitely did the thing with the first year where I was just like, I was inviting people to shit that I was doing, and I wish I hadn't. I wish I had banked that for later.
But that's sometimes I think people do get joy out of watching that. I know it seems so silly because like the perfectionist in us is probably like, oh, I can't believe you saw that, so you got to come back and watch it better. But I think they see you because that's before you saw yourself as a comic. They saw you as like my friends doing stand up, which in some ways they saw you as a comic before you did. And maybe that's why they're so nervous for you because they're like, oh, I'm part of this journey.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you like to like? You just literally just watch sports, or do you like have like stuff you do like? Not, I don't want to say in the real world, but I guess I do mean in the like off the media way. Like,
Yeah.
what do you do when you're like out? Because you said it seems like you like to get out your head out of work sometimes. Like, do you have like completely random hobbies that you're like, this is I knit?
I play video games. I watch TV and sports. I smoke weed, and I get my drink on.
Okay, so all fun things. Okay, so that's good. I mean, I'm just so curious because I'm like, I wonder, from what it sounds like, you're like have such specific view of like where things in your life should be, or like how to spend your time. So I was like, I wonder if there's any like surprise, like hidden hobbies of Mike that I don't know about.
Not really. I watch a lot of pro wrestling. That's about it.
Okay, well, that's interesting because wrestling is so fake,
Yeah, I
but
mean,
you have such a
it's a
part.
performance.
Well, it's a
Like,
performance, but in the
yeah.
sense that like it's both a bit of athleticism and a bit of comedy, but it has that element of like maybe it's safe because it's all scripted, but there's that moment of conflict and competition and uncertainty, but you're not as
Yeah.
scared that it's not gonna you can't really bomb if someone planned to lose.
I mean, you can have shit go bad. I mean, it's no different than like, ice dancing. Sometimes is what I compare it to, like paired figure skating. Like it's choreographed, but you could also like drop that person and something catastrophic could happen. Like these guys aren't opponents; they're teammates in this sense that it's uh, a routine that they need to both get through safely.
Do you get okay? Do you feel this way about watching like groups perform, like SNL or like sketches?
No, I've never really liked improv very much or sketch that much. I think it's when it's done really well, it's great. When it's done anything short of really well, it's really bad.
What about like SNL or like Portlandia? Like with any of these shows, do you have that feeling too? Where you're like, ugh.
It's not for me.
You just don't care. Okay.
Yeah,
I guess,
I used to love SNL like when I was a kid because it was what I had access to and it was what I was familiar with. Like I was more into the Weekend Update aspect of it than the actual sketches.
So interesting because when you said the thing about ice dancing, it made me think like, oh, I wonder if there's an element of like, almost like how your friends got embarrassed or not embarrassed, but nervous for you on stage. If when you're watching these specials or sports, like when you're seeing it as the athlete or the comedian and they're all alone, kind of like the versus like wrestling, even though it's something can go wrong, you're like everyone is in on it. Everyone's part of the team. So that's kind of why I was curious, but it doesn't seem like. But well, maybe you're just a tough nut to crack, and maybe I will never dissect why you don't like stand up. But God help me, I've been trying. No.
I don't like watching it. I don't like watching it on TV. It's not what I want to do in my free time.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I don't go out of my way to watch a lot of stand up. Sometimes I do it mostly because I want to. I do feel like I fall into a hole where I'm so in it that I lost sight of what I liked about it. And so there is a bit of like me trying to keep myself fresh. But yeah, there's two different sides of me. Like the work side is not, I'm not just sitting down. Like I can never just buy a ticket to a comedy club and sit down and have a laugh and drink with my friends without thinking that I'm like in a place of work.
Yeah, it's pretty fair.
Yeah. But specials, I don't feel that way. So that's the first time I've heard that. But that's a very unique confession, and I like that. Well, I do have a fun game I want to play. This one, I'm so curious because I've learned so much about you, yet also feel like I have more questions about you after doing this podcast.
Yeah, I usually leave with more questions.
That I'm like, I hope that this game goes well. I hope you like it. Because now I'm like, I don't know why my trigger tends to be like when I'm like trying to connect and this isn't on you. This is like really good for me to know. But when I'm like, oh, is it this? And I'll be honest, most of the time people are like, yeah, how did you know? And like, this is so good for me because it's so uncomfortable to just be like throwing questions at you and you being like so chill. Like you're not like mad, but you're like, no. And I'm literally like floundering like a fish. I'm like, what? Help! Connect!
Well, most of the shit is shit that I've thought about in fucking great detail. So it's like I've definitely looked at into the reasons, and I'm just like, yeah, I think it's just apathy in most cases.
Well, but so like just to give you context too, there's I've gotten confessions in this vein, and that's why I think it's so interesting. But in different. On the opposite extreme, like Caleb Sinan had, his confession was he likes to like overly invest in watching everything of somebody. Like when he like meets a new friend, he'll like watch all their YouTube videos, everything. And that I'm like, damn, that's a different side of also maybe being obsessive of your career too, because it's like beyond just watching it for fun, but there's an element of like this person, so I do think there's definitely something there that I'm not getting at and I don't understand either, but that's kind of why I was pushing. But I
don't even watch clips that I got sent for Faded. Like, I never will. If I see you out in the wild, and you're good, I'll fucking make a note of it. If somebody that I know is good vouches for you, I'll make a note of it. But I'm not watching clips. I'm just not doing it. I don't want to do it. I'm not going to do it. I know how I like a good idea of who's out there and who's making noise. And
that's fair. I don't really watch tapes either. The only times I have is when I'm like, wow, we haven't had like I'm like, it's all these like, straight white guys submitting to a show. So I'm going to like try to see some new people kind of thing. And then that's when I'll like ask for tapes, but usually even those, it's like, yeah, we usually have a good sense of who's out there, and it tends to be it's not that there aren't good women, it's that they're all getting fucking booked or whatever, so that's why the newbies are submitting tapes. But that's funny, I never realized that. I skip through on TikTok, I follow friends, and I don't ever watch their sets. But like, I don't like. I know it's not for me. They're trying to build a fan base. Like, they don't need me to watch their TikToks.
Exactly. Like most people, I'm just like, I will smash the follow button because you're my friend and I want you to have the fucking metrics that say that. And
Yeah, I'll type a haha without
yeah,
saying
I'll
it.
give it I'll fucking, I'm not looking at it. I'm not reading. I'm not watching it, but I'll fucking smash that like button and on to the next. Like, I want you to get pushed up the algorithm. You're my pal. I hope this gets to its right destination, but it ain't me.
I think that's actually a very healthy way to approach it, and I'm realizing that I probably put too much pressure on certain, like my boyfriend, for example, is not a comedian, but now that we know each other better, like I don't think he needs to be watching everything I do to try to get to know me. But there's a part of me that misses when we first started dating, when he was like watching my, trying to like go stalk my social media and be like, oh, you're really funny, because that's the work part of my brain who needs validation. But the human part that just wants to connect, it's like, let's connect by talking. So it's maybe healthy that you're not trying to do that. And I'm like, where am I? What is the fan part of you? Would you have liked me if you didn't like, would you be a fan? It's like, that's probably not a good question to ask. I'm glad thank you for putting up with my spiraling. By the way, do you feel it, or is it just me? Because I want to call out how uncomfortable I am with not being able to like read you. And I like that you're putting me in this situation, but this is like me spiraling, because normally people are like, oh my God, how did you know? And I think this is good for me. And it's funny to watch me spiral.
It's always weird when people are like classify me as like a tough nut to crack, where I'm just like, what? I say everything that I'm thinking. What are you talking? Like,
Yeah.
How is it that hard?
I think that's what it is that you are also like, it doesn't feel inauthentic. Like, it feels genuine, and you are being, and I can sense that. And that's the part of me that's going, oh no, it wasn't like, if you were being like, I don't want to answer and you're being rude, then it's easy for me to be like, oh, okay, well, like, I will give him space, but I know he doesn't want to say. But because that's not the case, there's almost this like, oh, he is just saying everything. Oh shit, I'm the weird one. And like, that's really sending me. And because we're friends, I can admit that. And I think that for the audience who's used to hearing me in a different way, this will be interesting. Well, do you want to play a quick game?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is based just name-wise because you host a show called Faded, and it's at Faded Comedy LA for anyone who wants to follow it. They do Twitch live streams, and it's really funny when it's back live. You should go watch it live. But this is called Faded, Blazed, or Stone Cold Sober. So basically like a variation of Fuck, Marry, Kill, except I will just list 3 things that you... Basically, if you had to do each of these 3 things, but you could only choose one state to be in for each, which would you choose? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I got it.
Cool. Okay. And these are all hypothetical, so you don't have to think too hard about, like, if there's, like, this first one has breakup, but you don't have to think specifically about a person. Okay. Would you, okay, Faded, Blazed, or Stone Cold Sober? Confess your romantic feelings to someone, break up with someone, or ask your ex to get back together?
Oh, God. I'm an engaged man, so I don't know.
Right, that's why I preface that with more like, think hypothetically in terms of like your past you.
Break up, sober, ex, drunk, and what's the other one?
Confess your feelings, blazed. I guess you'd be high.
That probably makes sense.
That's a good, yeah, that feels right. I think that's right. You asking ex, you should definitely not be sober for that. Okay. Brunch with your parents, job interview, JFL audition. So JFL, for those who are listening who don't know, is just like a big showcase in stand-up comedy.
Probably sober for that, high for a job interview, and drunk for brunch.
Okay. That feels fair. Okay, this for the athlete in you. Okay, play golf with Tiger Woods, basketball with LeBron James, or tennis with Venus Williams.
Probably sober for the basketball because I don't want to throw up. Drunk for golf and high for tennis.
Okay, yeah, that feels right. Part of me is like, because I'm so bad at basketball, I'm like, that would be fun high, but I would for sure get wrecked. And I cannot do golf sober. That would be a travesty. Okay, 2 more. Moving day, New Year's Eve, or graduation day?
Ooh, moving day sober, high for graduation, drunk for New Year's.
Okay. Damn, moving day sober. That means you're like really gonna get shit done. That's good. I feel like I've always
But after I'm done, I don't want to.
I try to like make it so tough for myself when I move. I'll be like, I'll put it off to last second, and then I'm like, I'm just gonna take an edible and pack, and it's like, why? But I've pretty much done that every time I've moved. Okay, here's the final one. Okay, host a sold out show, host or guest on a podcast, or do a late night set.
Probably sober for the late night set.
Do you want to have a little champagne to celebrate?
Yeah, I can have it after. They tape it fucking 3 in the afternoon.
Yeah, that's true.
I could probably hold off. Sober for that, drunk for the sold out show, and then high for the podcast.
Okay. I feel like you these seem so hard to me, but when you say it like that, I'm like, damn, you really do have your head is in the game, because I'm like, that it does feel like the right answer, even though there's no right answer. Thank you so much for doing this show, Mike, and for getting honest about your hate. No, I'm just kidding. Your hate for stand-up specials. And giving me a challenge. This has been really fun. And it's been fun to get to know you better. Tell the listeners where they can follow you and find you and check out your upcoming projects.
Hell yeah. So I am on Instagram. I'm fake Mike Mulloy. On Twitter, I'm back to handsome adult. They gave me my account for fucking 5 months of suspension. What else? MikeMulloy.com. I've got tour dates up. I'm going to be on the road a fair amount. Hopefully. I'm in Portland next week, Boston the week after, and a bunch of other places. Hopefully I can announce more soon. Hopefully I can, by the time this drops, I've announced that I'm doing the taping and that I've got an album recording.
Yes, heck yes. Follow Mike. Watch all that stuff when he announces it. You can follow this podcast at Tell Me Anything Pod on Instagram, and follow me at Larissa T on Twitter and at Teresa Lee Bot on Instagram. Thank you. Thank you for listening to You Can Tell Me Anything. You Can Tell Me Anything is a comedic podcast created and produced by Teresa Lee on the Hoo Ha Ha Podcast Network. The Hoo Ha Ha team is Ashley McAtee, Audrey Povar, Maggie Reed Austin, Cardi Assad, and Stephanie Binot. The theme song for this podcast was created by Cody Johnston. The outro music was written by Shipwrecked Sailor. And the Hoo Ha Ha app can be found in the Apple Store to stream your favorite comedy series and laugh out loud podcasts by the funniest women in comedy. To contact this podcast specifically, you can email tellmeanythingpod@gmail.com and follow us on Instagram at tellmeanythingpod. Thank you.